Hey guys, welcome back. So we are working on building this inner cross brace that goes from here to here. And here's our tube, which is a mock-up tube. And this one, I'll explain, we're getting close, but this has been a challenge. Alright, there we go. So that's actually 3 different tubes. Down here, there's blue tape over it, but that bottom piece, the middle piece, and then this other's the top piece. And then there's a piece of paper on it. Now it looks like it fits great. Well, the paper fits great. The steel underneath it, it actually does fit decent. Like, it's enough that you could weld it. But I kept adjusting it, trying to get it right, and eventually I just said, let me just build a paper template. So let me try to explain kind of why this is difficult. So it's angled. You can kind of tell that's obvious. And then it comes into this section at an angle, and it hits this tube, which is going square off of it. I took a bunch of measurements and tried to guess at what that would be, but it didn't really work out. And after considering the options, I said, you know what, I'm just going to keep grinding on this tube and then butt it up against it. And if wherever it's touching where it's not supposed to, I'll just grind that spot and just keep doing that until it fits. And that took a while, but we pretty much got it. Like I said, eventually we just did paper to finish it, because it's faster to modify a piece of paper than steel. I know, who knew? So now, the other problem we had was this foot. So this fits great now. You can see no issues there. But we had the rotation wrong. So we basically sliced it, and that let us rotate the bottom to get the rotation correct. And then by the time we got done grinding up here to get this to fit, it was too short. So we put a section in the middle to fix that problem. So anyway, this is kind of going okay now. I think our plan is going to be, we're just going to go ahead and tape a piece of paper to this, and then go ahead and tape a piece of paper down here and cut that out. And essentially we'll have one giant piece of paper that's a silhouette of this tube. Now this tube is 3 pieces, so I can't use it. But that piece of paper, I'll be able to slide it off of this tube, theoretically, slide it over a new tube, trace out the pattern, and at that point, I mean, you don't even have to use a tube notcher. You could just take a grinder and cut it to shape, which is probably what I'm going to do. And that should be it. You should have a single tube that's the exact same profile. And if that works, awesome. If it does work, then I'm kind of thinking about this in real time. So if I make one piece of paper like that, maybe I can cut it and basically wrap it backwards to make the opposite tube that goes over there. So I guess whenever I build this, I might want to think about that. Try to leave a way to cut that paper and wrap it backwards. We'll see, but that would definitely help. Then I wouldn't have to build this pattern twice. I could just mirror it, you know, for the other side. So hopefully we can do that too. But anyway, I like how this looks. We wanted this tube. There's a few ways you can do this, and you can see we kind of split the difference. We've got some of it hitting this tube and then some of it hitting that tube. That's the way I wanted to do it. I've seen people just go all on here and feather to a really sharp point. I think it looks dumb. Don't like that. So we did that, and we're going to have to hook a tube here somewhere in this region to the diagonal, but we'll worry about that later. My luck is it'll probably land right here and we'll have to deal with this, but if it does, it does. But anyway, that's kind of where we're at. This pattern thing was the big deal. Probably going to be using this method moving forward for complicated stuff, and I'm glad we did it this way. It was actually a lot quicker. I was going to try to do it in the computer, and I just didn't feel good about it. And I was like, you know, let's just grind it till it fits. And that was definitely the way to go. So hopefully this proves out. We'll just wrap this in paper, do our pattern, and cut a tube, and it'll fit. Okay, so here's our tube. We got the paper template thing wrapped around it. You can see that right there. That's a little bit that we added. That was intentional. Then it comes down over here, and we just kind of roughly cut that to fit the shape. And of course our intention is just slide that paper off, put it on this new tube, and transfer the marks. Okay, so check this out. Our method kind of worked. So the tube ended up being a little bit too long, and we had to sand on the bottom for a while. It could still stand to be a little shorter, because you can tell it's kind of close to the edge of the plate, but that's actually allowed. And the more you swing the bottom of that out, it opens up this gap, which is going to make it easier to weld. And some would argue that the whole point of this I mean, it's a brace, right? The idea is that if you get in a wreck, like say something hits the bar this way, well, that tube is angled to kind of support it. So the further it is that way, the better of a job it'll do. So it's kind of debatable whether it's better to be in the center of the plate or kind of further to the edge. I think putting it over here would be worse in all regards. So basically, the more you go that way, the better. So I'm happy with that. And check out our fitment. Man, I'm pretty proud of this. Like, this shit is bang on. Granted, that's the beauty of doing handwork and iteratively doing it, but we'll come look at this side too. Oh, sorry for the focus, but same story. It's pretty beautiful. I'm very happy with that. That'll be pretty easy to weld and that'll look good. So, awesome. We still gotta do the other side. I'll show you, we started, so here's our paper template that we put over a tube for the last one we made. And I drew this straight line on it before I took it off the tube. And the plan is I'm gonna take a pair of scissors and just cut that line and then invert this thing, basically flip it, peel it inside out, and then tape it over another tube and use that as the pattern. So hopefully that works out. Haven't tried it yet, but if that works out, we'll have a mirror image, and hopefully that should, it's either gonna fit or it'll be close. And we'll just go from there. Hopefully it, you know, we can make that work. Hey guys, welcome back. So we're working on the roll cage and I'll show you where we're at. So these little braces, we pulled the hoop out of the car and we fully welded out these inner braces. As you can see, need to clean all that up, but we got decent welds. I'm not going to say they're perfect, but they're decent. They're plenty good enough to pass. So that's kind of cool. And then we got these front tubes just kind of put into position. I guess let me walk around. You can actually kind of see. It's the first time for me really looking at it, but the cage is coming together. So we got the front tubes in here, and we need to make sure they're symmetric. So you can see I kind of rigged up a level between the two, and then I've got this angle finder, and I was checking that because all this weight is pushing it that way, which is kind of preferable. It moves it further back, which is moving, you know, if it was going to go one way or another, I'd rather it move back. I can adjust this easy enough. I've got a big clamp up here, and I can just hook it from like the windshield to that bar and pull it to adjust the angle, but I'm kind of okay with where it's at. So we got those two, and then for symmetry, and so it doesn't rub, there's a spacer in here, just cardboard, but I taped it. Same on that side. And like I said, we got this straight edge back here, and we made sure that the angle of the hoop, which is basically 0, matches this. They're both within 0.05 degrees, so a 20th of 1 degree, plenty good enough. So looking good there, and our fitment's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's plenty good enough. I can weld a gap, and that ain't much. So looking nice there, and we're kind of getting ready to start welding on these. We got to figure out how we're going to do that. So here's that list we were doing. I know nobody really likes this, but we got through this, we got through this. So we're at the top of page 3, and there's only a little bit, you know, there's 4 and a little bit on 5. So we're making good progress. So this is the front tubes, and I'm going to look at the list, but the issue, of course, is that we have to be able to weld. So like in the car, welding this joint, the roof comes off. So welding this in the car is not that difficult. So I have no issues welding that in the car. Now welding that plate to the car, I could actually do that too. It'd just be a lot more difficult. So if I had to, you know, if I had to do both, okay. I could actually TIG weld this. You'll note that I've got these magnets holding the plate, and I've got a piece of wood. It's the same thing over there, but I'm using that as a spacer so that they're symmetric. But if I was to take this piece of wood out, I can actually TIG weld that in the car. And I know I can do that because I TIG welded this joint. And guys, that is a bitch getting in there. The cup just runs right into this, so you have to either have a, you know, you got to figure that out. There's a couple different ways you can do it, but what I did was I just had the tungsten hanging way out of the cup, and had to turn the gas flow way up, and I still couldn't get an arc in here, so I had to start out here and get a puddle and just jam filler rod and let the like capillary, or I don't even know what it was, but for whatever reason, once there was molten metal here and I built a puddle, then I was able to swing my tungsten and feed the filler in, and it kind of like flow. I couldn't see what it was doing, but I could see that I was adding metal and it had to be going somewhere, and it did work. So I was able to get that fully welded, and that's tighter than this. So if I did that, I know I could do this. So I'm just kind of realizing that may be of benefit, potentially, to weld some of the other stuff to these tubes out of the car, and then weld this tube in the car on both of these. So I'm definitely going to be thinking about that after this video, because that might be of benefit. But even if we do that, we're still going to tack weld them to the plates now, just so that their position is established for fabricating the next thing. Because the next thing is these diagonals, which essentially we're doing this. We talked about that in a previous video. So we'll have a diagonal, and then we'll have a rocker bar that's going to be a two-piece, something like that. So anyway, this is kind of our setup, and I guess I'll bring you guys back and get a little more progress.